TriCaster is more than a traditional video mixer. It allows you to have the look of a very large studio from a very small production space. It also features the ability to create layered video effects that can be accessed like any other input on the switcher. All these effects are accomplished by using LiveMatte to remove a background color and a virtual input to layer this key on top of other sources or merge it into a virtual set. In this video, we will cover setting up LiveMatte, setting up virtual inputs, creating a simple key, using a double box effect, and using virtual sets. We will set up a key using LiveMatte on a live input and then use that live input in a layered effect and a virtual set. We will look at the different types of virtual sets available and how to use them. Keying an input gives you the ability to remove a background color and replace it with another background. In the TriCaster, we do this with LiveMatte, and every input on the switcher has its own LiveMatte with independent controls. Removing the background for replacement is referred to as pulling a key. But before we get into the controls for pulling a key, let's talk about the environment. There are a few things you can do to improve the quality of the key you pull. First, make sure you use the best video resolution and format from the camera that you have. High definition will always look better and pull a better key over standard definition. Many cameras will output several formats, including composite in standard definition and component video in standard and high definition. For this TriCaster, the best video format is component, then YC, then composite. High definition can only be brought in as component. Make sure to manually white balance the camera, turn off auto white balance, auto gain control, and auto focus, and control these things manually if possible. Make sure the on-camera talent is not wearing the background color. Even eye color can be an issue. The keyer can key any color. The most common colors to use are chroma green or chroma blue. These colors are used as they are the farthest away from skin tone. Backgrounds can be painted walls, colored cloth hung on a rack, or a pop-up color screen. There are cloth chroma color screens available online, and if you are using a cloth, you might want to invest in a bottle or can of wrinkle remover from your local grocery store. You can find it in the laundry aisle. Wrinkles on cloth can cause shadows and on the backdrop, and this is not desirable. There's also chroma paint available for a wall in your studio if you have the space. Make sure to buy chroma paint, not just green or blue. Chroma color paint is a very saturated version of that color, and this makes it perfect for pulling a key. This is all available online, or check with your NewTek reseller. Pop-up green screens are also available at most photography stores. If you are using a green screen, then make sure the talent is not wearing any shade of green. There are also companies that specialize in green screen environments if you want a more professional setup. Lighting is important when trying to pull a good key. The trick here is even light on the backdrop. Even light is better than bright light. You want soft light on the backdrop to avoid any hot spots. The best situation is to light the backdrop separately from the talent. Evenly light the backdrop, avoiding hot spots. Move the talent away from the backdrop to avoid shadows on the backdrop from the lights on the talent. Now, in some situations, you have to light the backdrop and the talent with the same lights. The same rules do apply. Shine even light on the backdrop and the talent. Try to avoid shadows, but sometimes you can't if you only have a light or two. The LiveMatte keyer in the TriCaster is great and will remove most shadows. It will work in situations that other keyers will not, but there are limits. Now let's pull the key with LiveMatte. Coming in camera 1, we have a green screen shot. To access LiveMatte, click on the gear for that input. Click on the LiveMatte and Crop tab. The first thing you need to do is pick the color you wish to remove. Left-click on the eyedropper and hold down the mouse button. Now drag the cursor over the colored background you're trying to remove. Notice you can see the color swatch changing as you drag over colors in the interface. When you are over the green, let go to select it. The LiveMatte will turn itself on and the green will disappear. Now by default, the input has a black background, and this may not be the best for setting up a key, especially if the talent is wearing black. There is an easy way to use any background while pulling a key. Click on the V1 buttons on both Program and Preview. This should select the V1 tab in the lower left. If not, make sure the interface configuration is set to Tabs Follow Preview for virtual inputs, and that's selected here. The V1 tab is the setup area for virtual input 1. Now, in V1 Setup tab, you have Input A and Input B rows on the virtual input's internal switcher. Input A is foreground and Input B is background. Place the input you're trying to key on A. Place Graphics 1 on Input B row. Now go to the Graphics 1 tab. There are a variety of pictures available in the TriCaster content. If there are no images in this player, load some by clicking the Add button. Clicking on any image in the player places it in the background. Try placing different images in the background until you get one that's got some nice contrast. Now, go back to the LiveMatte controls for Camera 1 by clicking on the gear in the Camera 1 monitor. The two controls under the color picker allow you to adjust the key. Tolerance allows you to adjust the range of color picked to be removed. More tolerance removes a wider range of green hues. Smoothing tries to smooth out the edges of the key. Start out by setting both tolerance and smoothing to 0. Start with tolerance and remove the background. Now bring up smoothing to smooth the edges on the talent. This may bring some of the background back. Add a little more tolerance. Go back and forth between these controls until you dial in a great-looking key. There are also controls for spill suppression. These will remove any spill from the color screen that's spilling back onto the talent. Now the two controls that you have are tolerance and smoothing, and they work very much like the tolerance and smoothing controls you use when you're pulling a key. Also, have the talent move and turn left and right, as these changes might affect lighting and that could affect the key. There may be times where the input you are trying to key has a background which is not filled with the key color. Or maybe there are other items in the shot that need to be removed. Each set of LiveMatte controls also includes crop. The crop controls draw a hard line in from the left, the right, the top, or the bottom, and removes anything from the input not being keyed outside of the crop line. So as you can see, the edges of this stand-up shot are not covered by the green screen. These can easily be removed using crop. Bring in the crop line from the left and the right until the unkeyed edges are removed. This is great if you are working in confined spaces with small green screens. Once an input has been keyed, you can see this right on the interface. Notice the input has a green light on. This indicates LiveMatte is in use. The blue light indicates that crop is in use. There's also a yellow light indicating that the proc amp is active. These functions can also be turned on and off by clicking these lights like buttons. Let's go ahead and key the other green screen inputs. In this example, I have a single shot of Kiki, a single shot of Rex, and a 2-shot of the both of them, keyed and ready for use in a virtual input. There are a variety of effects possible with LiveMatte and virtual inputs. As a default, a virtual input sets up as a basic A over B key. The keyed talent is on A, and the background is on B. Choose any input of the TriCaster as your backdrop on input B. a live input, DDR video playback, still or graphics, even key live talent over web pages or presentations coming in from an external computer using a network input as the background. Now you can use the positioner on the A row to scale and position whatever is coming in on that input. In this case, it is our talent. In the virtual set input setup area, click on the crossed arrows icon at the right end of input A row. Using the magnifying glass icon, you can left click and drag to scale the input size. Then use the crossed arrows icon to position it anywhere on the screen. You can also click and drag on individual axes. By default, the axes on the scale tool are locked because if you scale on one axis, you distort the image. The lock can be turned off by clicking on the lock icon. There's also a reset button to undo any changes you have made within the positioner. You can also reset individual variables by holding the Shift key down and double-clicking on the numbers for that variable. This will reset that single variable back to its default value. Now, whenever a positioner is being used, you can see an indicator light next to the positioner launch icon, letting you know that it's active. Above the A input row, you have an overlay row. This is an overlay for that virtual input and will only appear on that virtual input. Go to Graphics 2 and load the NewTek logo with transparency. This is found in the Stills area in the NewTek session. It is the one with a gray background. Select Graphics 2 on the overlay row for Virtual Input 1. Hit the Take button just above the overlay row. The logo appears on the virtual input. You also have a positioner on this row to scale and position the overlay if you like. This overlay will only appear on this virtual input, allowing you to set up a layered effect without using the downstream keyers. Once this composition is set up in the virtual input, it is accessible like any other input with the click of one button. This allows you to use the 4 virtual inputs to set up 4 different effects that you can easily switch to during a live show. The virtual inputs can also be used to create virtual set effects using the included live set virtual sets that come with the TriCaster. Let's go to V2 on Program and Preview. To load a virtual set, click on the gear next to the current effect name, which by default is A over B. There are a variety of sets in different styles and looks. Full standing sets show a full body shot in the icon. These require a head-to-toe green screen shot like this. There are a variety of close-up shots, and these are shown with a waist-up shot in the icon like these. These, of course, require a green screen shot from the waist up. And there are a variety of seated behind the desk shots, which require a seated shot. Many sets have multiple camera angles, including left, right, and center, and these require several camera shots from these angles as green screen inputs. So the first thing to decide is what set you will use and what shots you will need for your show. For this show, we want to use a set that allows for a single shot of each host and a 2-shot of both of them behind a desk. The Plaza set will work well for this. Not all sets work the same way. You need to experiment with them to find out what each one does and how you can use it. You can either scroll down to the Plaza set selections or use the filter at the top of the requester and type in Plaza. There are 6 set options here. We will start with the center shot. Click on it and click OK. Once the set loads, you can populate it. Input A row is the talent, and input B row is what will be in the on-screen monitor. Let's choose camera 1 for input A. You now see the talent behind the desk. If they are not the right size or in the right place, you have two options. Adjusting the camera is step one. Just like input quality, shot quality should be as good as possible, and the internal positioner controls should be used as tweaks. Zooming the camera in and out will scale the talent in the virtual set. Panning the camera left and right and tilting it up and down will position the talent. There are also camera aligners to help with this task. Click on the gear to load a new set. At the top of the set list, there are some aligners. There are aligners for 1 or 2 people behind the desk as a center shot, a left and right single seated shots, a center close-up shot, and a center full standing shot. Load up the single center aligner. Now zoom and pan the camera to fit the talent in the outline. It doesn't have to be perfect, just close. Now click the gear and reload Plaza Center. You can also make camera adjustments while looking at the set and compose by eye. Once the camera shot is set to the best of your ability, lock the camera down. You will not need a camera operator for this camera during the production if it's being used for virtual sets, since the incoming camera shot will never change. You can then use the positioner at the end of the input A row to make final tweaks if necessary. Now you can choose any input on the input B row to fill the on-set monitor. This can be live video, the DDR, or any input available on the input B row. This row can also be positioned and scaled inside of the on-screen monitor by using the positioner at the end of the input B row. Let's add a bug to the corner of the screen using the overlay. Select the bug you want to use in Graphics 2 and set the overlay to Graphics 2. Now take the overlay. Select camera 3 on the input A row, which will put the 2 shot behind the desk. Now there are 2 options for zooming the camera within the virtual input like you see here. You can snap zoom using presets, or you can even set the zoom level for any of these presets by clicking and dragging the slider at the top of each preset like you see here. You can turn on animate zoom and have it zoom in and out over time. Now you can move from preset to preset using the icons with animated zooms. There's a pop-up control to select the speed of the zoom, or you can click on the number displayed in the pop-up and you can scrub that number or type in a custom speed, faster than fast or slower than slow. The speed can even be changed during an animated zoom. The number is the number of seconds that it will take to complete the camera move. There's also a T-bar next to that pop-up that allows for manual control of the zoom. Notice, anytime a zoom is done, there's an automatic ease in and ease out, giving you a super smooth motion. But for now, let's leave this on a wide shot. Now we can set up our first single shot. Go to V3 on Program and Preview. Let's click on the gear to load a set and load up Plaza Left. For this shot, I will use a single shot of Rex. Now, to create the illusion of this being in the same set as the 2 shot, we will zoom all the way in on this shot and never zoom out. If we look at the 2 shot, we see Rex is next to the monitor. So we use him in the single shot, as you can also see the monitor in this camera angle. It is important to set the input B row of both sets to the same input, so when switching from one camera angle to another, the monitor content remains consistent. Now we will set up Kiki single shot. We will go to V4 on Program and Preview. Click on the gear to load a set and choose Plaza Right. Zoom all the way in. Notice you lose the monitor from this shot. Now, you have a shot of Kiki close up, a shot of Rex close up, and a two-shot of the both of them that you can zoom in and out on. Remember, the single shots always remain static with no zoom or it blows the illusion. That's only for the setup in this Plaza set. Now let's go back to V1 where our basic key is set up. This is a beautiful effect, but there is another way to display video with talent called a double box. Let's click on the gear to load a set and choose one of the double box effects for the Plaza set. The icons for these look different. They look like the effect, and they are labeled double box left or right. Now, the talent is in a small box and still inside the virtual set, with a much larger box playing the B-row video. Let's remove the overlay in V1 by clicking on the Take button in the V1 Setup tab. Now let's say you want a bug on the 3 camera shots, but not on the double box. Load a new tech bug into Graphics 2. With the bug selected in Graphics 2, we will set the overlay for V2, V3, and V4 to Graphics 2 and take it. Remember, the overlay can be any input, including live video, so you could size and position the overlay as a picture-in-picture type effect as well. Each overlay also uses transitions to enter and leave the screen. So by choosing a fly-in effect and using the auto button, you can fly video and graphics on and off the screen when using that virtual input. The speed of the effect can be adjusted here, just like the speed of the zoom. And you can load any effect by clicking on this gear and selecting Browse. Each time you run an effect for an overlay, it will reverse its direction automatically. This means the first time you run an overlay, it flies on, and the second time you run it, it flies off.